I find that one of the most potent ways we can up level and exponentially compound our life energy and how we're living and what we truly desire is by being in the energetic space with those who are doing it too. And so today I have an amazing treat for you. I have a wonderful conversation with myself and the amazing Dr. Jessie Mahoney, who I call a friend, a colleague, and I've also had the wonderful opportunity of being on the coaching end. And so I've been able to watch her journey firsthand. And today we unpack a lot of what it's taken for her to get from where she was to where she is now. And I am offering to you that this conversation, if you listen, if you hone in on what she says and take in the energetic transference of what she's offering to you, will help you shift your life in ways you can't even fathom. Welcome to Whole Human Capacity. Mind, body, emotions, spirit, all in alignment. This show is for the high achievers who are done living in hustle, done running on stress, and ready for ambition without having to go up with your heart truly desires. Here we'll talk about what it means to live life as a whole human, how your nervous system, your inner knowing, and your daily choices all work together, and how to build a life that actually feels like yours, not one that just looks good on paper. Hi, I'm Erica Resch, a retired family physician, a mom of 3, and a life coach who has rebuilt my life around what I refuse to regret. Welcome, everyone. I am beyond excited, if you can't tell by the look on my face if you're watching this on YouTube, about this conversation we're about to have today, because I have the most amazing woman sitting in front of me who has brought such joy and warmth and grace into my life in a way that I can't even explain. And I've learned so much by watching her journey. It brings like tears to my eyes. And I'm just grateful that she's here. And her name is Jessie Mahoney. And she is a beautiful human who is also on this journey with me of serving other humans and helping people come to their true potential and what is here for them in this lifetime and living it well. And so I am so grateful you're here, Jessie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And thank you for your generosity of sharing what I know is about to be an amazing conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to do this with you.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get down to it because she and I were just chatting offline here before we jumped on, and we have some awesome things to share and to talk about. And I'm excited because I get to see a different side of Jessie today in this conversation. And I love I personally, I study a lot of things. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I love listening to interviews of like the people who are mentors with me. So I love listening to them teach, and I love listening to their concepts and their methodologies. But then I also really like having other people interview them, so you get to see this different side of them, and what's kind of behind not behind the curtains, but like just like all the intricacies and the fun things. So I want to start this out by asking you to kind of share your story with us. Share maybe where you were and where you are now. And if you know where you're going, we're open to hearing that too.
I probably can't answer the last part because, as you know, that happens when it happens.
That's true.
Um, and I think I'll start just where I was probably a little bit before we met.
Yeah.
And in 2017 or 2018, I was a pediatrician at Kaiser, and I had been there for a very long time, like 20 years. And I had a lot of leadership roles, one of which was physician wellness. And I had a husband and 3 kids and a house and a dog and all the things that I had worked so hard to do and get. And I just had this sense of sort of gnawing. I think that something wasn't right. And I just we were just talking, actually, I would say I wasn't really having fun. It's not that anything was wrong. And in fact, I would say I actually love pediatrics. I love the kids. They make me laugh. But I just sort of felt like that I'm not meant to do this for not just the rest of my life, but in my case, it was another 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And the thought of that um, really got me to take some action, is what I'll say. And I had been working as the chief of wellness in this big institution for a long time. So I had tried a lot of things and I had explored all the resources that we had, um, and even resources beyond my institution that maybe we wanted to try and bring to other people.
Mhm.
And I hadn't actually found the solution. And if there was kind of a catalyst, it was my husband had of a long time. So my husband and I are about to have been married for 33 years. So he had a significant mental health issue, which was sort of the thing that made me realize that, something needed to change. And for all of us, not just me. And I imagine that many of you listening are also like me, and that you're the emotional leader of your family. You're not only the organizer, but you bring that energy. And so I kind of took it on as my role to fix, which didn't work at all. And so I realized I had to really fix myself and just bring the fun and the joy and find what I was meant to be doing at that time. That was not what was in my head. What was in my head was that I had to solve the problem, and I didn't know how to solve it. So I actually worked with a coach at that time who had zip zero to do with medicine. In fact, I wanted someone who didn't know anything about medicine. And by the time I was done working with her, and I worked with her maybe over 6 months, I had signed up for yoga teacher training and actually finished it. And I had signed up to do coach training. And I always allow myself to do things with I can do yoga teacher training and not have to be a yoga teacher. And I can do coach training and not have to coach. Um, so I did it really because I just wanted to understand it. I had no idea that that would be a path towards anything. I mean, obviously, when you look back, it was a path towards something, but that was not why I did it. I did it in a way that we often talk about, that it just felt like the right thing to do. So I just signed up and I did it. And that has led on this long journey, which is kind of totally unexpected. I wasn't actually planning to pivot out of medicine. I thought I was gathering these tools to use them in my work and help my colleagues at work, and sort of build a program there. And I never envisioned that I would just take a pivot in a totally different direction. Although now I can kind of see from the bigger, atmosphere, that of course I would have done that if I look at who I am and where I came from and what kind of person I am. But in that moment, didn't really have that perspective. So for me, the shift has really been like getting those nudges of, you and I sort of call it twangy or discomfort, and recognizing that something has to shift. And then it's really following my nose to figure out what it is. It's not really my nose, it's sort of my heart more than my nose, but it's a little bit of both,
No.
just that sort of exploratory path. So since then, I ultimately resigned from my job in 2020. And, I'm actually gonna say I'm thankful. Where I worked, you couldn't do something else and work there, which was great. In in the end, I thought it was a terrible thing, but it got me to do what I wanted to do. And so I, left right before COVID, not knowing COVID was coming, and that also was helpful in that it meant that all of the things that I thought I was gonna do to kinda play it safe all went away overnight, and I got to just dive in and explore. And I like to think about it as making your decision the right decision. And that's just leaning in, is what that means, or going all in, or having your own back. And from there, it's been this just ongoing shift. I think sometimes people think, well, you pivoted and here you are. And I will say, not at all. Like, I pivoted and there I was for, 6 to 9 months. And then in 6 to 9 months, I was doing something else. And it's kind of continued that way since then. So I built a coaching practice, and I call it that, but I also don't think that what I do is straight coaching at all. But that's the name that most people can resonate with what I do.
Mm.
And I worked with some institutions and a lot of individuals. And then in 2021, actually, and we had met right before this, I and I messaged you from this place. We went to this place for vacation, really, because it was during COVID, and it was a yoga retreat center that I had not in my head at all to do retreats or anything like that. And when I was there were just all of these signs and all of these things. And I thought, wow, like, I think I'm meant to be doing this. And within 6 weeks, I had made a reservation and done a retreat there, because it just sort of fell into place. But I also think that, if you look at sort of all the clues as to getting there, I love working with people in person, and being on Zoom all the time is good, but not as good as being in person. And I actually need both for my energy. I can't do all of one or all of the other. And so, from there, it has evolved. I actually just yesterday finished my 38th of those retreats, and this is only 5 years later. And it's become about half of what I do, and I love it. And in order to do them with more ease, and also because clearly I was meant to, we ended up, selling our house and moving to a place where we can do retreats, which is absolutely magical, and really making it a space that is, like, aligned 100% physically with what we do, and that's only something I've really come to realize recently is, like, it's not just what I bring, it's not just what my husband brings, and I imagine we'll get to this, but my husband also ended up leaving his job, and now we work together, which was not at all in the plan either, and then, we have together sort of built this space that is an extension of us, and that's, I say purpose built for what we do, which is adds to the magic.
Oh, man. Because I have been able to be the witness of all of this, most of this from, like, the third party view, but
Yeah.
to hear you say it in your words is just so, spellbinding is the word that's coming in, like,
Yeah.
awe, because what I would like to offer is what you're showing us through your language is the embodiment of your journey, like, the true like, taking it in and the returning home to who you are and loving yourself in that and growing in that. And you and I both know there's a lot of highs and lows in that process. We could sit here and tell the story, from this end. It's like the documentary you watch about somebody who went to like the Olympics or like a championship team or something, but it doesn't include like the micro moments in between, those years
Right.
where things were not always, in clear view. And even as you and I asked you about what's coming next, that's not necessarily in clear view either. You're still walking this process.
Yes.
So I could go so many different places with this, Jesse, but the the part that's coming into me to
Yeah.
ask you is I, I want to offer, just from my perspective, one key skill or like master key or however you want to look at it that I think you have refined in such a powerful way is really giving yourself the space to move in a way that your energy moves. And you
Mhm.
hit on it when you said, I can't be all in person and I'm not all on Zoom. Like that is you like starting to say, like, no, no, I know how I move. I know where my center is. I know how to fulfill myself and keep myself in overflow energy so I can serve at my most potent level and have fun and everything's joy filled. What has that part been like for you? I mean, if you don't mind, I would love for you just to describe in your words, like, what does that actually mean? Like, what does that mean to find that? And what does that actually mean to walk that process as you're finding that?
Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, to find it is it's constantly finding it. It's constantly noticing what feels in alignment and what feels out of alignment. And you mentioned actually coming home to yourself. And I would say it's coming home to yourself as a guide, but there's not actually like a home there because you keep moving and you keep shifting. So to me, it's actually like being in your body and letting your body be the guide. And I think a lot of one of the things that I love about yoga, and actually I love now about creating a physical space for transformation, is that it is that somatic sense, and it is literally what you feel at the cellular level. And I never before this made decisions that way. I made decisions from my head and what you were supposed to do. And, I'm the oldest daughter and I'm the responsible one. And I always was the one who was, I wouldn't say I was a people pleaser, but I wanted to do the right thing from a really good place. I wanted to make change, but I was always sort of driven by what was going on in my head, not really what was going on in my heart or and even in the belly and the rest of me. It's funny, I usually feel heart-centered, but in this conversation, I feel much more belly-centered, which is
Mhm.
unusual, so I'm really curious about that. But
Mhm.
either way, I think I can actually just tell, like, how it feels, and I think one of the things we've really worked on is to just trust it.
Yeah.
And, in medicine, we were taught not to trust ourselves, and we're taught to sort of trust externally what people have to say, and I think I've now finally gotten to the point it's not that I don't care what other people think, but I do know that what I bring to the world and the change in the way that I help people. And I just see it happen over and over again. I'm like, well, if I trust myself, that's where the biggest shifts and transformation and change for me and them happens.
Yeah. The word that comes in, and you know me, I see things like in
Yeah.
equations in my
Yeah.
head. Like I have trust equals potency,
Yes.
right? Like potency in your own life where you are receiving the highest yield on energy coming at you and within your life and relationships, but also the potency in utilizing our gift. And I've really been playing with this even more, this kind of concept where, you know, I do believe, at least in my personal being, that the desire to contribute and to make an impact is like a human need. It is a driving force within us. And you and I were both in places where we were pretty comfortable. Like
Mhm.
we had great titles to our after our name. We were on projects that seemed really cool and like exciting and on the forefront of certain
Yeah.
like, you know, different implementations in medicine and where things were headed. Like we kind of had
Yeah.
we didn't have to move. We didn't have to do anything. And yet we chose to. And I think that that is a place where we that is the initial returning home. That is the saying
Mhm.
I matter. Like how I what I'm here for and what my purpose is and what I'm getting intuitively
Yeah.
matters. And I've noticed in you that your coaching methodology, like your business name is Pause and Presence. And to me, we've always talked about this, Jesse and I talk about a lot, like language, like the energy of words. And for me, those words for your personal energy and the way you move and your gift are like dead on, highly potent, energetic signatures of the gift you are here to offer other people.
Yeah.
But my question is, what is it like for you to, because let me jump back. I don't think we can actually serve in our highest level of our gift until we embody our gift and we embody what we're here to do. And that's a different level, especially for those of us who were taught to be in theory. Like in medicine, we were trained to be in theory because most likely we had not walked the journey of 99% of our patients in whatever quote unquote disease process they had, right? Or situation they were in. So we were always in theory mode. But that's not necessarily to me, I don't think we actually tap into the a heart and as you said, like, our deep knowing of what we're really here to offer until we get into embodiment mode. So,
Yeah.
I would love for you to share, like, what is pause and presence for you? What does that look like in your daily life? How did you take what you've learned to embody for you and now turn that into something that has changed the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, probably tens of thousands of physicians. You know what I mean? Like the impact you're making is massive.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not sure you've heard the story, but I, so before I left my job, I took a pause, a literal sabbatical. And the very first week into this pause, I went on, my husband and I went to Hawaii, which I literally planned like 3 days before because I had, when you're working as a physician, I was like, well, here we are. What are we going to do? And I had really no plan for it. I just knew that I needed to do that to figure out what was going on. And I actually had every plan to go back to work. And while we were on that trip, and actually it was pouring rain most of it, we went to the Big Island. And so it was not like your typical Hawaiian vacation. But I think that was actually sort of helpful to have it just be flipped upside down. And everything on that trip was actually flipped upside down. And somewhere on it, I just said to my husband, oh, you know what I'm going to do? It's going to be called Pause and Presence. And he was like, what? And I actually can't even tell you where that came from, but it was just very clear to me that that was what the name should be. And as you know, that's how I roll. And so, um, then really, I mean, if you look back now, that has been my whole process, and you can't really see what's next, I always say, until you're in the pause. You
Mhm.
have to slow down enough to see it, and you have to unwind your nervous system. Nobody knows what they wanna do from a place of fight or flight or overwhelm, and nobody knows what they wanna do from below empty, and I think so many of us think we have to figure it out before we can change, and for
Mhm.
most of us, we can't. And I think that's actually part of the premise behind the retreats, or sort of not just the premise, but what I know to be true is that when you pull people out and you restore them and nourish them in all the ways and help them unwind their nervous system at the somatic level, that's where things begin to happen. So I think oftentimes people talk about the pause or the micro pause. And yes, we need all those too. Like I teach this concept of honoring diastole, which is you have to have that pause to refill in order to have systole, and that happens in the human body in nanoseconds, but in the world in big and small ways. And so it's really the pause where you can get the inner knowing. You can't get the inner knowing without the pause. But then you have to be willing to sit with it, right? And what is it? That's the presence. You have to actually see it and actually feel it. And I would say let it change you. I think we try to control things, and in presence, you're not trying to control it, right? You're not ahead of yourself. You're not behind regretting or judging or any of those things. You're just literally in it. When I teach yoga, and I do a lot of forest bathing now, like mindfulness, experiential mindfulness. I always talk about dropping in, and that's what presence is. But I think people have different language for it. It has to be more than just this like ethereal thing up here. It's really presence in your body, being with yourself, because you can't get the clues and the information that's there if you don't do that. And I think sometimes, we keep coaching up on the higher brain level. I'm going to change the way I think, and I'm going to figure out. People think of a coach as like an advisor. They're going to guide you and tell you what to do. And really it's helping you guide yourself, but you need those tools. And I think for people who might see it doesn't work, it, elsewhere, it's because they haven't also sort of done the physiologic work. Because we can override our body to a point. You and I know that. We do that in medicine all the time as physicians and healers. And yet it gets you to a certain place. It gives you a certain result, which is not necessarily the result that you want. I think the other thing that I really lean into is feelings, and in the way that I coach, and you don't know this because but is that I really say I coach from feelings, and I think we all know how we wanna feel. We don't know what job that looks like, where we're living, any of those things, but we know the feelings, and so I like to work backwards from there. And I think you can't know those feelings unless you're present, first of all, with the feelings you have now, which usually aren't those feelings, unless you've done a lot of this work. I think now mine are very close, but
Mhm.
it took many years of work. And so this idea of being really clear about how you feel and how you want to feel, which is a little bit in the future, but it's the current want. So it's actually in the moment if you think about the presence.
Yeah.
But I think so many of us move so quickly that that's also the idea of pause and presence. There's so much science around the pause, and in some ways, I think it's overused, and I love it, right? Because you can pause and do all the things. So I like to say pause and breathe, or pause and celebrate, or pause and rest, or pause and whatever it might be. There's so many. Pause and connect. And that can just the pause is really, we say it's where the power is, right? It's where you get to choose how you're gonna respond rather than react, but it's much more than that. It's like where the magic happens if you're willing to sit in the presence.
That's so good. You said one line that just hit my heart that I think is so true. It's you said you have to be able to let it change you, which requires trust. It requires faith. It requires so much something deeper in you than I don't know the surface level of things. I don't have the exact because I just feel the energy of that.
Yeah.
You know, what has it been like for you? Because I have watched you walk where you have let it change to you. And as a human who we were, let's be real, we were trained to control. We were trained to predict every negative outcome. We were trained to get ahead of something before the negative outcome could possibly ever happen, right? What has it been like for you to really because the last few months that we've had some discussions, I just see you actually, like, walking the walk and not say you haven't walked the walk, but, like, you're walking the walk on
Yes.
this one.
Yeah.
Like
At a whole new level, at a whole new level.
like,
Yes.
bam,
Yeah.
like, "Okay, this is what I'm" like, even I think if you the story you just shared is, to me as the observer, you were given these beautiful words that were here to guide you, pause and presence.
Mm.
They were here to be your guiding light of your gift and how you were to serve the world,
Okay.
and you'd let it start to you let it start to control you, and then you hang on a little bit, and then it
Mhm.
kinda
Yeah.
slowly goes. But what's it like walking that? And then what is it like now? Like, what does it feel like in your body now?
Yeah. I will say in the beginning, it was probably terrifying, really. And I think some people say like, well, how did you do that? And I'm like, it's a bit like jumping off a cliff and just trusting. Uh, but then I start to think like, well, who better to trust than yourself? And I also had the gift, and I think all of us do, but it's recognizing it that my people, my children and my husband believed in me more than I did. And I just borrowed their belief for a bit. They just kept saying, "You've been talking about this for a long time." In fact, my kids said, "We don't believe you're going to change anything." Um, but like once you decide to do something, it always works out. So why don't you just do it, right? And I think so. Sometimes you can borrow other people's beliefs. Sometimes I borrow your belief. Um, and I think now I have my own belief, but it is just a deciding that it's gonna work and believing that it's gonna work, and it's it's in part a bit of looking for the magic and looking for the signs. Like, I think when I went to that first retreat center, there were signs everywhere, and I know it sounds voodoo, and yet a sign is also you looking at it and it feeling meaningful, and so it's you being willing to connect with what's right in front of you, and I think most of the time in the world, we close ourselves off, so we're not open to that. I've been talking a lot recently, and this is something new, this idea of kind of being a permeable membrane in safe spaces. And so when you're a permeable membrane, then what's out there for you? Because that can be your guide. And then you can take good care of yourselves when you're in spaces where you can't be a permeable membrane because you can't be one all the time. But allowing that information to flow in and out of you, I think is where the real sort of alchemy or transformation, I don't know what the word is, but, a scientific physiologic change happens. And so I have come now, I'm not terrified at all. I actually am kind of like, excited. I'm like, "Oh, something really cool is gonna be next." I don't know what it is, but something really cool is gonna be next. And am willing to sort of wait and let it be. I've also noticed something recently where I'll just put it out there. I actually now say it. Like, "This came to me. I don't know what that's about, but there's something there." Because when I do that, I park it somewhere. I used to write it down, but now I actually say it because that also, for whatever reason, saying it out loud, not like as a I'm accountable to myself. It's just putting it out in the universe almost. Like if you put it in your journal, it's different than putting it out in the universe, if that makes sense. Um, and these days, I think once you are willing to do it and you let go of all the reasons why everyone told you you shouldn't and why that's crazy, um, it's actually the most powerful tool out there if you want to live in a way that not only feels good to you and not only is fun. I mean, I think the thing that is really hitting me now is the impact that you can have when you do it. And that is actually what terrifies me now, um, is that piece. It's a totally different piece. It's like once you really live into this and actually become like a product of what you believe in and what you do, and you've done that too, then the potential potency of that is like, well, what do I wanna do with it? And I kn that does sound a little woo, and I don't mean it to sound, like, very grandiose, but there's this energy there that you can see the possibility, and, our world's kind of a mess right now, so I also think we really need people who can create shifts that help people navigate it in a way that, is healthy and human and keeps them intact and able to also show up as their best self for the world, because that's really what we all need.
Yeah. I'm getting the translation almost of what you're saying is when you decide to let go of control and you decide to trust, what ends up happening is you drop into more of a pull energy and you're not
Mhm.
pushing and you're not forcing and things are coming your way. And you do have to rewire your nervous system to be at the place where you can see the signs, you can
Yeah,
receive the help, you can receive the
yeah,
information.
absolutely.
But it's also the way forward because you are locking into this I don't wanna say future state, that's not the best word to use, but, like, this embodied state, this place where you know you're really meant to be, and then what I've noticed in your process is when you get the little ding, you can feel that energy. You can feel the signature of that energy, and you're like, "Oop, gotta pay attention to that one. Gonna put it out here. Not sure where it's going yet. It'll be so much fun to see where this leads, but I'm just gonna put it out there because I trust it. I
Mhm.
trust it's gonna lead me to a place that's far beyond what I can even imagine right now."
Yeah,
The place that I've watched you do that the most is when you decided to move.
yeah.
What was that like for you? Because in my interpretation, looking back on that, season of your life. That was to me when you decided, I'm going to play to have fun. Like, I'm not just going to play to check the boxes and to go through the motions and to do a lot of good for a lot of people. I'm going to do this my way and I'm
Yeah.
going to have a lot of fun doing it. What was that like?
Yeah, that's interesting. And actually, I think that started when it started or maybe 2 years before that, actually. What comes to mind is where I really decided I was going to do it my way. And actually, I always sort of have done it my way. It's interesting because I can't really do it someone else's way. And when I try, I just don't do anything. Like if I do it the way I think I'm supposed to. But when I was doing my master coach training, they made me come up with a project. And the project that I came up with, which they said I couldn't do, which was fine. I did it anyway, was to have my husband work for me because he had been asking for like 6 months. And that was the thing that terrified me the absolute most. And the reason I bring this up is we couldn't have moved had we not done that. Because that also allowed the retreat thing to expand because he's an integral part of that. But it also shifted us into this idea that together we could have fun and together. So there was it wasn't just me picking up my family and moving for something that was me. It was moving for something that was both of us. And I think that that's an incredibly unusual thing to do. I mean, we're not supposed to work with our partners, right? Most people don't. And what I thought was interesting is the reason I pitched it as a project was, I think for me, it was probably the hardest thing to do, even though this was a person I completely trusted and had been with since I was 15. The thought of first of all, then I was going to be responsible again, which was something I didn't want to be. And I'm not really, actually, now I realize, but that was what my brain told me. But it's just this idea of I had to let go of some control because it wasn't just going to be me. And it was, I don't know, that was also a vision of something much bigger than I had ever imagined. When I started this journey, I didn't think he was a part of it. I thought he was going to keep doing his lawyer job and keep doing all of his stuff. So I knew for me that was like the biggest, hardest project I could do. And it was funny because, as you know, I like a little middle finger energy. So when they said no, that couldn't be my project. I was like, fine, I'm going to do it anyway. Um, and but it was that gave me sort of the nudge to then say, wow, well, we can now, what do we want to do? Like that was a whole new expanse of possibility
Yeah.
opened up, which probably was there before. I think my husband would have been perfectly happy to do this before, but it helped me sort of feel like it grounded me in a way that I wasn't
Yeah.
before. And I was able to embody it in a deeper way. And he still might not have decided that this was the place. And we told people when we got here, we were just like, oh, again, like this is the name. I was like, this is the place. And we had a realtor helping us look, and she didn't actually tell us about this place. It just popped into my email, and I said, well, I want to go see it. How come you didn't tell us? And she said, well, it doesn't meet any of your criteria. And I was like, well, it's still the place. And it's interesting. So kind of what I thought was my criteria weren't my criteria. And as you know, to me, it's like you get there and I know.
Yeah.
And I often say that, like, I just have to go and I'll know. Or on this journey, I have found myself in places where I'm like, I don't even want to stay in this hotel because it's not me. It doesn't fit. It's not right. I'm not going to, which is a very odd sensation that I think all of us feel in our lives, but we don't allow ourselves to shift. And so now I actually have allowed myself to shift, and I've realized the world doesn't come crashing down. And so you can do more and more of that. So once we made the decision to move here, and I will say actually it was 2 years ago this week that we actually moved here, it's like everything shifted. I began to really feel like I was steady on the ground. And for me, place and environment are so important. And it's something that being here, I think I always knew that, because one of the things that was so hard for me practicing in medicine was the lack of windows that opened. First of all, the lack of windows, and then the lack of windows that opened, and then the lack of color and the lack of nature, which I think is such an integral part of our healing. And so I've just more recently become really clear on, I mean, I knew the power of environment, but to, I think, watch it work. And maybe what I'm picking up on is that when I get feedback from retreats, people now, it's actually one of the things they always comment on, like the magic of this space and the intentionality. And it has taken, over time, it gets better and better, obviously,
Yeah.
the little tweaks you make. But there's a level of potency there that is very different. And even I'm thinking, I have the most beautiful yoga room here, and I have a yoga deck outside, but we also will practice in the redwoods or on the lawn. And like practicing doing the same things in different spaces has a completely different impact on your nervous system.
Oh my gosh. We could break that down to like 4 other podcasts,
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Okay, we'll do that another
so
day.
many
Yeah.
good things in there. If somebody's listening to this and goes back and listen to what she just said, there are so many pieces of that that you can transpose into your own life that I have transposed in my life watching you. It's been incredibly potent. The one thing that keeps coming in to ask is, I think for me when I was at the start of my journey, and I think for any of us, especially us moms, when we start getting these like nudges and these knowings, and we know deep in our heart that our life construct is not going to necessarily look the same. Like you're saying, the
Mhm.
location in which you live, the actual way you're returning income into your
Yeah.
household, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
all of these pieces and parts that, especially if you might be wired like Jesse and I, where you worked really hard to get those pieces and parts
Yeah. Yeah.
and they became security and woven into your identity. What has it been like for you and your relationships? Because I think that for me was one of my deepest fears that if I
Mm.
keep following my dreams, even though deep down I knew that was the way to have connection with my children, that was the way to strengthen my marriage. But in the fight or flight and in the spinning and in the decision, when you're kind of struggling with, I kind of call it the divine tension where you're getting the call of where you're to go, but
Yeah.
things aren't going to look the same. What is it actually like? Can you share what it's been like for you in your relationships with your children and obviously share with your husband, like the people that really just are so potent in your life and what has transpired for you every time you've said yes to what your intuition has told you is the yes?
Yeah, I will say they're all so much better. And I was a pretty good mom before. I was a pretty good wife before. It's not like I would say it was just your average, or I mean, maybe better than average. I'm probably putting myself down there. But for one, the model of doing that has given, I have 3 young adult kids, them the the message that they can do that too. And I think when kids have the model of a parent who's just doing what they're supposed to do because that's what you do, that becomes the model and it's become the standard of our society, right? You sacrifice here and to me it's this might I don't mean it sound judgmental, but it's playing small. And some people might say, well, it's not playing small if you have parents who are doctor and lawyer and you're getting like and for us it was. And so I think what I see my kids now really living into each of them in a different way, who they are and creating lives that are uniquely them. Um, it has become it's really amazing to watch. And I don't really credit myself, and yet I do see that the power of watching someone, and they have said this, like, if you can change, anybody can change. You know, and if you can give up all that, because I gave up a lot to do this, and create something that you actually deeply love. And, people say, my kids actually say, like, oh, when you retire, I was like, I'm not going to retire. I love what I do. Right. And it's not like I just don't need to stop and start. Like to me, it's not one and the same. I don't know what I'll be doing. I don't even know what retirement is. And in fact, I coach a lot of people who are close to retirement and they're like, but what does one do in retirement? And I'm like, well, to me, it's just sort of what do you want to do next? And we have this idea in medicine, right? You get the job, you do it forever, then you retire, and then I don't know, life begins. But modeling for others gives them permission to do that. It also allows them to actually see you. I think that my kids saw a version of me, but they didn't see the best of me. And now they really, really see you, even down to my grandkids. And uh, well, the one that can talk. I don't know what the others think of me yet, but but I bet they feel it because it's a somatic thing. But that's something I've really come to notice recently is like I show up so differently because I'm living everything so differently that you're sharing that gift with them. And I think that's what gave my husband the idea that, like, he actually proposed. So when I got to the point where um, I do a lot of things besides retreat. So I was doing a lot of things and I don't want to not do them because I love them all. So I love to give talks and I love to, do stuff for institutions and I love to do one-on-one coaching and small group coaching and I love to do my retreats and I couldn't do it all myself. And so I said, I think I have to hire someone, which I really didn't want to do because I also just like to keep it simple. And so his proposal was hire me, right? And I was like, wow. So he actually wanted to be a part of it because it had such positive energy. And this was coming from someone who had been struggling with severe depression before that. Like it actually gave him the idea that like you could live in ways that are aligned. And when you say actually moving here, it's interesting. I think I was well on the path and it sort of skyrocketed it. But for him, it's what actually like opened the doors and all the windows to really being his true self. And I think when our kids see that, it's pretty magical, and I see them choosing already to honor themselves and to honor how they wanna live, and it's very different for all 3 of them, and honoring that in each other. Like, there is it's just really pretty magical. I never had any idea that that was part of this journey. In fact, I had this idea originally, as you mentioned, that maybe it's selfish to, step out of I don't wanna say leave medicine because 'cause I'm in medicine all the time, but step out of my clinical pediatrician hat and my department chief hat and even my taking care of all my colleagues in that way. But what I see is that having done that, I've given myself this gift, but I've also given everyone in my family and then just well beyond that. And I hear from lots of people, I think this is true, but it's hard to see this idea of like, wow, well, then it is possible to do this, right? And I think if we don't have examples of it, people don't know it's possible. And yet you and I are both examples of it being possible. And I think also examples of I didn't do this on my own. I know you might say, "Oh, you did," but I allowed myself we spend a lot of time together. I get a lot of support from from my husband and my kids, and, I have some friends who support me. So really let yourself know what kind of support you need. Some of my yoga teacher people who taught me to teach yoga, I can't think of the right word, but, so I've had these sort of guides along the way who have had really meaningful impacts and just allowing people to impact you in that way. I'm about to do another yoga teacher training next weekend, and I just have this sense that, like, you go in with your permeable membrane and see what happens, and you allow that alchemy to happen with no I don't know what the outcome will be, but it's gonna be interesting. I know that.
Yeah. Well, that's when the journey gets really fun, right? When you trust without having to have an expectation. You don't need to know how it's all going to work out or all the pieces and parts. You just know you're supposed to be there
Mm.
and you go in and see what unfolds. And in that unfolding, everything changes.
Well, and I think the ballast is that you don't need to know, but I do know that I will figure it out.
Mhm.
And I do know that, the world is not going to collapse. I think when you work in medicine, we're sort of told if you step out of line, the world will collapse. Or if you
Yep.
don't do it the way everyone else has done it,
Mm.
something untoward, I will say terrible will happen. And so I think I now believe that that's not true and I can navigate and won't necessarily be easy. And there are always, as you know, there's always big bumps, right? But that I have the tools in there to figure it out. And that
I
whatever it is will literally be like alchemy, right? It'll turn you into the next version.
Yeah. The last thing that's kind of coming to me to hit on is what you're bringing up. And my opinion is I think you've been able to develop the capacity to do that really well because you have developed a relationship with contrast where it does not rock you. And let's be honest, for I think for any of us humans, but like at the beginning of that journey, it kind of did, right? There was like this rocking. And then as you get stronger and stronger and your foundation gets stronger and you commit yourself, like it's almost it's like this back door to allow the breadth of your internal strength to be so strong that when you do get that intuitive knowing, I'm supposed to be this yoga teacher training, you know that, like you said, nothing, the bottom's not going to fall out. What has the dance with contrast been like for you? And also just offering, what has it also really shown you about your process and how you actually move very efficiently through the world, in my opinion?
Yeah. And one of the things I think I've learned along this way is that what you just said, which is my process and following my process, which isn't necessarily the same as others, but I think there is a way to decide that you're going to follow your process. And there are tools that you can set yourself up for success with following your own process. And I think so it's not totally random. Think sometimes we're like, oh, it's magic, so it's random, but there's so much you can do to support yourself and to navigate that. And it used to be that I would call it the twangy feeling, or I would have, in medicine, we kind of have this compare and despair, or I should be there, or it should be like this, or dropping into the, I clearly belong doing something different, but the negative what ifs. And now when I feel that like that's not for me or that's not me, I actually see it as fun information rather than a big problem. And as you pointed out, my process is actually that I have a lot of clarity about who I am not. And when things don't, so sometimes it's subtle, like when things don't feel good. And before I made the pivot from my clinical practice, I had a very subtle nagging, but it had been going on for years. And then sometimes it's loud that it's not me. But for me, when I know it's not me, that's where I can then shift and say, okay, well, what is me? And I often know in the contrast. Whereas when I just ask, like, oh, what do you want to do next? I'm not sure, but I know what I don't want to do. And then I can say, well, what's not that? Or what's the opposite of that? It gives me this way of sort of questioning and exploring that is incredibly powerful and useful. And I think many of us know we get that it's not me. And then we just feel like we don't belong, or there's something wrong with us, or why don't I fit in, or
Mhm.
I feel like a failure. And I will say that anytime, especially those of us who are high achievers or in medicine, when something's not working or you're going to change it, the story we were taught is it's a failure. And yet it could be my new story is you've just outgrown it. You're ready for something new. And you can outgrow the things that you created too. I think that's something that I'm learning along the way. Like, well, that was last year's version and this is this year's version. And it's not that it wasn't working. It's just you want to grow it, evolve it, which we are all about evolution, right? But we forget about that in ourselves. I'm a pediatrician, so kids are allowed to do it. And once you hit whatever age, 25 or 30, once you've picked your career, you're supposed to be done. And yet we all know that's not true. We wait for the midlife crisis, and instead, can you just kind of do it all along the way? But
Mhm.
I think for me, that's one of the most potent tools that I have is to notice when I'm not. Or even if I have a strong reaction to a person or a place, it's actually a clue if I'm really looking to, well, what's sort of my highest the space that's gonna serve me the best. Well, if I have a negative reaction to a space, I'm like, there's good information here
Yeah.
that those aren't the things, and so what is the thing? And that's a louder noise for me than what is the thing, because I know what the thing is when I land there, but if I'm searching for it, I have to kinda know what it's not.
Yeah. Which means you've developed, a relationship with the bumping up against it process, and it's not that you're going the wrong way, it's not like it's part of the and I think you've created, fun and joy around it, like, "Oh, not
Yes.
that one."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I didn't used to think it was
that's
hard.
not the hotel for me," or, "That's not where we're gonna be doing this." Like, "Okay, alright, well, that was a cool experience, so let's see what happens next. What's the
Yeah.
next one?" You know?
Yeah.
But I will say I just think you move energy so efficiently and get your clarity so crystal clear in a very low, spinning, confusion, all the things that take our energy, all
Yeah.
the things that take us from our presence, all the things that take us from joy and the fun and the excitement of the journey. You have learned how to take the clues that are given to you with complete neutrality, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
where that doesn't mean anything, and it's more like, "Okay, that's information," just as if, like, you were, like, looking at labs or,
Yes.
something of that
Yeah.
nature that you did
Yeah.
in the previous part of your journey, right? And that, I think, is maybe not everybody moves that way, but that's the sweet spot. That's the place that if you can hear her voice and how she's talking, that is the place to get to because life becomes really fun when you get to that place.
And I think everybody can get there
Mhm.
if you're willing to, and the journey there is not easy, right? But we've had so many things we actually were there. I have a 3-year-old grandson. You're there when you're 3, right? And we get slowly untrained, and the more training and the more all of this you do, the farther away from yourself you get. But you can unlearn/untrain and get yourself that way where you really are moving through the world with the least blocks and the least energy. It's like activating that flow
Mhm.
state, which is an energetically positive state.
Yeah.
And that's where the fun and the joy can come.
Mhm.
But I think we can all get there. Our process to get there is different,
Yeah.
and it's a really fun journey once you decide. It's not all fun. I mean, there's a lot of as you and I both well know, there's a lot of bumps along the way, and those bumps are so worth it.
Yeah, for sure. So to kind of round this out, Jesse, I just want to make a plug, or I don't know what the right word to use is, a reference to your amazing TED Talk.
Oh, yes.
And because I do think that if somebody is looking for a guide to how to start to navigate this journey, your TED Talk gives that. It is a practical tool. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that and
Yeah.
where somebody could find that
Yeah.
to really engage.
And I'll say, actually, I think I'm really proud of it. Although it was really, I mean, it was hard to do, as you know, and hard to put yourself out there in that way. But it's called What Would Love Do? The most powerful question we are not asking. And it does sort of tell the story of how I got here, but it also tells the story of this question, what would love do, which is the question that I use when I'm making a decision. And because I want to move forward in a loving, heart-centered way, but also because I think love can't steer you wrong. And so when you're trying to figure out whether to move or not, or whether to shift jobs or not, it's love for you and love for the others involved, and then love for the greater world. And those can be broken down into lots of other things, but it's an and, not an or. And the right answer includes the and, right, of all those things. And I think once you start looking at life that way, all of these possibilities open up. It's like um, you can see the world in color rather than black and white. I have a favorite children's book that's written by Rachel Naomi Remen, who's a physician. And in the author's note, she talks about seeing with your heart and how that helps you see the world in color rather than in black and white. And that seeing with your heart is sort of how we heal the world. And I like to use that as like, for me, what embodies that is this question. That's the practical tool of what would love do. And I think it's a great place to start, and it feels amazing. And I've seen that question for so many people just be absolutely transformative, whether you're thinking about changing your relationship or where you live or what what you do for work or how you want to relate to a teenager or an aging parent. It works for everything. It can even work for, institutional budget decisions. Like I know that we don't tend to think that way, but the world would be a better place if we did, and that's kind of the idea of my TED Talk. So you can find it, um, apparently, ultimately, you can find it on the TED website. I cannot yet, so you can find it on YouTube, and if you put in TEDx Talk Jessie Mahoney, MD, it shows up. Um, I think you probably now could find it under What Would Love Do, but I encourage you all to watch it. It's only 12 minutes, and it's a feel-good TED Talk, whether you do anything with it or not.
Yeah. I will say, it's very core. It is definitely can be used in expansion, 100%. But it can also be used where you are on your knees and your back's against a wall and you are in spinning in fight or flight and your nervous system is so heightened that you don't even know how to get yourself out. I
Yeah.
have found it to be one of the most potent tools to ground instantaneously and anchor you and drop into that parasympathetic nervous system so that you get clarity and you can take that next step. Which I think when you are moving, as we're talking about here, from a place of comfort and you don't have to do anything to
Mhm, mhm.
really stepping into big dreams and what your heart is really telling you, that firefly comes up.
Yes.
It's there. It is part of the journey. And encourage, implore is coming in.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
if you want a tool that is going to move the needle for you, that is so pristinely simple that your brain will target it and move with it, this
Right.
is the TED Talk for you because it is incredibly potent, and I use it all the time for myself, all the time. So,
And
thank
it's
you.
even better when you put your hands on your heart,
Oh, that's yes.
right? The embodiment part. It shifts your neurochemicals, but feels amazing. And I will say for those of you who also move through the world scanning for danger, which is what I do, and we were taught to do in medicine, close your eyes, put your hands on your heart, and then ask the question, and then its potency goes up about 1,000-fold.
Mhm. It is yeah. It's a gift. It is a true gift to humanity, your TED Talk, because like you said, if that is implemented, the game changes. And what everyone starts to see as the upper limit and what's possible for themselves, in my opinion, blows the door open because that question will let you start dreaming in a way you've never dreamt before. And all of these things start coming in line. So I brought that up last because to me, watching Jessie's journey, that question has been the anchor and the thread that
Mhm.
has gone through every piece that she just shared today. The way that she's navigated all of this, even though she's told you the story in different ways, I've had the amazing, I don't know what the right word to use, honor of, and it brings, like I said, brings tears to my eyes of watching the strength and the fortitude of her navigating these situations and these decisions and going for it, even when on paper,
Yeah.
it doesn't always look like the evidence is adding up to your logical mind. But what she would ask herself is that question, and that question guided her and so many and I know it still does today, Jesse, you use it all the time.
Oh, I use it all the time.
That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that is the method. That is the way forward. So I'm grateful that you packaged that in a way that the rest of the world gets to see it like I've seen you walk it because it is, um, just like I said, it's a true gift to humanity. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for seeing me and, being my partner along the way. It's, I think it there are ways of approaching things, and the way that you and I approach it as sort of our honest, authentic self is very aligned, and
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing that so many people are looking for, who's the person that will get you there, and I will say it's a person that you fit with, and a person who, way of seeing the world is similar to you. Um, and maybe you don't necessarily even know that you fit with them, but it feels right, and so therefore you fit with them, and your logical brain doesn't understand it. Because I would have said, like, at the beginning when we met, would we have fit together? I don't know, but, like, you feel it and you knew instantly that there's, like, a match, and so I think finding that for you is an incredible gift to yourself, but also to the world. Like you were mentioning, this tool can help you be your highest, wisest self and create things, but the ripple effects of that are really what the world needs
Mhm.
now. And if you have any idea that like it's selfish, which I think part of me thought in the beginning, there's no way that showing up as your best self and creating amazing things for others to take part in could be selfish. We were just kind of trained to think that because it works better for the institutions of the world.
Yeah. So if someone wants to hear more of your voice, where can they find you besides the TED Talk?
Yeah. I actually have a podcast called Healing Medicine, and with Jessie Mahoney, and I do it with a longtime friend and colleague who is Ni Cheng Liang. So if you type in Healing Medicine with Jessie Mahoney and Ni Cheng, you will get us, or usually just one of her names also works. And then, you can find out all kinds of things about my voice. If my website is either jessiemahoney.md.com, it's also pauseandpresence.com. So either one of those, And I have a blog there, which is 100% my voice.
That is
Um, and there's lots of other things there that you can find. You can join me for yoga. So if you want to hear my voice, that's my yoga voice, which is one of my favorite voices.
yes.
And I know you've done some yoga.
It's
You
so
can
good.
also find those on YouTube, but all the links to all those things you can just find on my website. Um,
Yeah. I, just as a sidebar, I have done your yoga and it is transformative and it does take you into your body, into a place where you really are present.
Mhm.
It's extremely powerful. So I'm offering that to anyone and you can and it's a gift that Jessie offers on YouTube. So you can join her whether live or you can join her, you know, whenever
Anytime.
when it fits for you.
Yeah.
So
And I teach all summer long, and all the summer recorded classes are from outside at this beautiful space that we created, which is that season now. So you
so
get to be there on YouTube,
yeah,
of course, but
yeah.
be there and
And feel
in
the
the
environment
airwaves. Yeah.
presence. So
Yeah.
good. Okay, well, I know this is part 1. There's gonna be another one because I have so many notes of things that we could sit here and talk about for hours. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being you above all. It's truly an honor and a gift. Thank you.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
This is awesome. All right, till next time.
Thanks for being with us today. I know that this conversation will transform your life. And if there's any pieces and parts that really stuck out with you, if you have a knowing within you that something more is opening on the horizon, reach out. Email me at erica@wholehumancapacity.com and we'll schedule a time where we can get together and explore how I can help you step into your true, most aligned, energetically efficient self. And above all, if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, follow, or pass this along to somebody who you know would really benefit from this message.